Ladies and gentlemen, after a short hiatus, welcome back. It's time for the Screen Sermon Podcast. It's the Boon, and I'm here with Jay. Jay, welcome back. It's been a while.
How you doing, sir? I missed out on the Boon. When did you get this new title, sir?
We were talking about the 1958 version of The Fly versus the 1986 version of The Fly. And somewhere along the line, in the second part, it was a two-parter, and in the second part, we were chatting about how essentially David Cronenberg could essentially make a film about the baboon that's in the 1986 version of The Fly. And in a nice little moment of silence, I said, yeah, and they could just call it The Boon. And we all about lost our minds. And I just kind of took the moniker on. So that's kind of where it came from. We've been running with it ever since. So, folks, this week we are here to do another Needs to See episode as we are hurtling toward what we're going to call Screen Sermon Season 2 when we start doing things more in arc format, where things will still be Needs to See episodes, but they'll be part of larger arcs of directorial bodies of work or films that are connected by a theme or central plot elements and things like that. But anyway, today's episode is novel because as of the time of this being released, tomorrow will actually be the 25th anniversary of the release of this film, and Jay has never seen it. So this week, we are going to talk about Jay Needs to See the Steven Spielberg World War II epic, Saving Private Ryan. And an easy way to kind of jump into this, I think, is to just kind of right off the top ask, Jay, what did you think of it? Did you like the film?
I absolutely loved it.
Okay.
It was nothing like I expected it to be. I've realized that I could probably make my own rival podcast with just movies I haven't seen, because there are a pretty large list of classic movies I haven't seen. No, my only experience this movie was Mr. John Zaff's class, which was our middle school social studies teacher. We talked about D-Day. He showed us the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. Was about all I knew about the. I through the years have I know about the movie. I love Tom Hanks, and at some point I was probably in my 20s when I found out that Matt Damon was in the movie. I was like, oh, Matt Damon's in that movie? He's like, yeah, he's Private Ryan. I'm like, oh, okay. So, it's just another one of those movies that it's not like The Crow where I got interrupted every time I tried to watch it, but it was just one of those movies that I always knew about, and it's just I don't know, not the opportunity, but yeah, it was just like, I haven't seen it in this long. Like, this is just gonna be one of those movies I die never seeing, and I'm glad I'm not, because I really enjoyed this movie. Yeah, and
it's certainly entered the zeitgeist as this kind of seminal film in terms of the portrayal of World War II, specifically the Normandy invasion and D-Day. And talking about that scene, I mean, if I don't recall our Mr. John Zack showing us that in school, it's wildly inappropriate if he did. But shout out to Mr. John Zack if he somehow is finding this podcast. And thank you, because your class was great. However, if looking back on it now that I've also rewatched it for the show, the opening segment of this film is essentially the entirety of that Normandy invasion, and it's 27 minutes long. And so it is a nonstop thrill ride for that first 27 minutes.
So I was shocked. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I actually took note of that, because once the movie kind of went to the next scene, I was like, how long was that beach scene? Like, that whole siege. I was like, holy smokes, it was over 20 minutes long. And I not to jump too far, but I went in thinking this was going to be a completely different movie. Like I said, I really enjoy Tom Hanks. And his movies have a certain feel to them, and I was unsure how they were going to make a World War II movie with a Tom Hanks feel to it, and I've realized that they just made a World War II movie and left the Tom Hanks feel out of it. Like that movie, it was heartbreaking in scenes, and how gory and just violent it was blew me away. I was not expecting it.
So I gotta know, what does the Jay version of Saving Private Ryan look like? What were you expecting from it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't know what to expect going in. With the fact that it being a Tom Hanks movie, I didn't think. I thought they would have shied away from the gore. I thought they would have shied away from just how, in my mind, how real war is and how dark war is and how miserable war can be. I thought it would have been a more, I don't know, I thought it would have been more about them figuring out how to get Private Ryan and how to, it'd be more of like a stealth thing, and maybe a couple guys would get shot, but it would be like off camera. It wouldn't be, dudes getting slow motion stabbed, in a clock tower, or, they're being blown up by a grenade that got thrown out. Like, I just assumed it would have been a lot more, I guess, stealthy and more about the planning of the mission rather than just these all out battles.
Yeah, and there's certainly a level of like, this is if they took World War II and made Game of Thrones out of it. Like, yeah, don't get attached to the characters because not many of them make it out.
Yeah, again, not to jump ahead, but there was definitely a point when the final bridge scene. There was a point where I was like, oh man, they're all going down. Like this is a Game of Thrones, like use that Game of Thrones situation. Like they're all gonna die. and yeah, I mean, I feel like the opening scene of the film, like I said, is long, and one of the things that I pick up on. So as we split up these things into little categories and things like that, like one of them is about writing, and I didn't take tons of notes about dialogue. And the reason why is, especially, if you break it down, this is a 2.5 hour film roughly, and the first 20% of it is that Normandy scene. And in that scene, there ain't much talking going on, and the talking that is going on is military lingo. And so it's not really for the audience, it's just this very authentic, or at least to my ear, it sounds like it's an authentic representation of how folks would talk to each other in those kind of scenarios and things like that. And so there's just not a lot to say about the dialogue other than to say I give a lot of credit to the performances in that they must have had to learn a lot in order to be able to deliver that on screen. But then the film really kind of starts when you get your principal group together, when they form the battalion that's going to go and look for Private Ryan. And that's kind of when you get your characters and your heroes that these are the ones I'm here to root for. Yeah. There's not a ton of dialogue. I mean, there were some pretty great lines in it. I really enjoyed the idea, the story of them trying to figure out Tom Hanks's life before war. I thought that was great. What's the pool up to now? One of the lines that I wrote down during the game when they're trying to figure out what where Hanks is from, he says he was made out of spare parts and dead GIs. That line really cracked me up.
Yeah, and the camaraderie really grows after a while, and then you get more of those nice dialogue pieces like the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I give a lot of credit to movies, because I mean, though I could make a whole podcast of movies I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of movies, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of war movies. Inglourious Bastards, I absolutely love. Fury, I absolutely love. This movie now, I absolutely love. Just to name a couple. And they did a really good job of building like building these characters in a way that like you could tell they were all really connected, and I grew really attached to the characters. So like that closing scene when they all start dying, I mean, I haven't been like, I don't want to say heartbroken, but for lack of a better word, like heartbroken about characters dying in a long time. And I'm just like, okay, well, this guy's not going to die, is he? Oh, come on, no! Like the guy, the guy that they brought with them as a translator, I could not remember his name to save my life.
His name is
he's
Corporal
the one that
Upham.
talked the Tom Hanks into yes, Upham. I wanted him to die more than some of the Nazis by the end of the movie. I fully acknowledge that war is terrifying, and I have no idea how I would act if I was ever put in that situation. But watching this movie, that guy, I think, was the biggest villain in the movie. I mean, he's the reason that I wrote his name down. I'm awful at names, everyone. I'm really sorry. He's the reason that I know his actual his real name Giamatti's Giamatti. The guy that was up that got stabbed by the Nazi. It was like slow, and he was like begging, he's like, no, please, and he stabbed him. Really, he was standing on the steps the entire time that was happening, and didn't go help him. And then when Tom Hanks gets shot, it's the guy that he convinced Hanks to let go, and could have, did something to stop them as they were slowly building up that line. And then he gets his his moment when he shoots him after they captured all the Nazis. I was just like, he should be the one that's dying, not, the sniper, not, Mike. Mike was like one of my favorite characters in the movie, not Hanks. None of those guys should have died. It should have been this guy.
Yeah, Upham's cowardice and his lack of experience with weapons and things like that obviously gets a few of the characters killed. So the ones that you're referencing, I think it's Private Mellish, and they just call him Fish. He's the Jewish guy who gets slowly stabbed to death in a just gut punch of a scene. And then his stance that he takes on taking a prisoner of war and then basically executing them because of what they did by killing some of their men, specifically Wade the medic, by convincing Captain Miller to let actually the Nazi that he lets go that is credited as Steamboat Willie, because he's talking about the American stuff. So they call him Steamboat Willie. So Steamboat Willie is let free, and he does eventually, just like Private Rabin says he's gonna do, is meet up with some of his Nazi buddies down the road and keep killing their friends. It's exactly what happens. He's the one, like you said, ends up shooting Captain Miller, which ultimately causes his death. And yeah, I mean, Upham is responsible for those things. But yeah, he does have that full arc. He eventually does have that turnaround where, despite his discomfort with firearms, he does kill Steamboat Willie in the end, and take a gaggle of Nazis prisoner himself. So yeah, that's very tough. I mean, Wade's the medic Wade, his death is also really bad when he's begging for his mom, and this is right after they have the church scene conversation where he was talking about how his mom used to get off early from work just to come home and talk to him, and he would pretend to be asleep. And he was reflecting back on that time and saying, I don't know why I did that. And then when he's dying from his gunshot wounds, he's calling out for his mom. Just heartbreaking stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, did you see enough movies? You can kind of see it coming. When they were that final battle scene, I'm just like, oh man, like I got so bummed out because I knew what was coming.
Yeah, and so I mean, from a writing standpoint, not necessarily talking about dialogue, but just plot threads and how they come back into play later on. It's a really competently written film. It's very tight. And then the other thing that I thought they teed up, and then I really had to pay attention to it. In the beginning of the film, Mellish, the Jewish guy, he ends up taking a Hitler Youth knife off of one of the dead Nazis that they find. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was the knife he gets stabbed with, but it's not. It was his bayonet that he gets killed with. And I remember when he is handed the Hitler Youth knife by one of the other guys, and they're essentially giving it to him because he's Jewish. And so it's kind of a rib on him, but he does put it in his pocket. And later on, I was paying attention to like the knife. What is the blade that's in his hand? And it's not. It's his bayonet from his weapon. So, but yeah, it was I think so. Very competently written film. And I also wanted to point out, and I guess this isn't really surprising because a lot of war movies end up taking that look into the camaraderie among a bunch of people who have to face this together. This movie was a lot funnier than I remember it being.
Yeah. But like, and I've touched on this every episode I've been in, like the whole Gimli rule, like it being funny and taking me out. Like, this is how this movie mastered having funny scenes or scenes of levity without taking me out of the movie itself. Because, I mean, you can have, a crummy job or, be at war or, doing something you absolutely don't want to do, but you still the people find ways to make things fun or to find ways to lift their spirits. So it's totally believable in these situations that these guys would be like busting each other's balls or making jokes. And I think since we're talking about the writing, like the way they slid those jokes in there was seamless. It was so good.
And there's a bit of physical comedy in there too, and it's probably it's potentially my morbid brain, but I think it was done intentionally. When you're in the midst of the D-Day invasion, and we're in Normandy, and stuff's blowing up, and there's machine gun nests just raining down fire on people, and tons of American soldiers are being killed. In the midst of that, they end up coming up to a bit of a kind of a beachhead where they're able to hunker down because they're really close to the machine gun nest. And he's got Captain Miller, Tom Hanks's character, has a guy up next to him who has one of those phones. And he reaches over to the guy the first time and he's like, tell them this, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes back and he's talking to the people on the other side of him, and the camera's panning with him. And then he pans back and he talks to the guy with the phone again. He's like, all right, then tell him this, blah, 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 blah. And then he goes back and he's talking to the other guy. And then the third time he comes over, he grabs the guy and turns him over to tell him something else. And the dude has been shot in the face. Like, his head is gone. There was something about the way that they filmed that. It was really funny. Horrible, like absolutely horrific. But really funny.
There were two scenes that they were both on the beach scenes. The Tom Hanks is running up the beach and he grabs a fallen soldier and he's dragging him, and then it's revealed that basically from like the waist down the guy's completely missing, and Hanks is dragging him for a bit and then like realizes it and then just kind of lets him go. That, and then the scene, one of the only scenes I clearly remember was the guy gets shot in the helmet, and like he pulls the helmet off, and you hear someone say like, "Lucky son of a bitch" or something, and then he immediately gets blown away. Like, it's dark humor, and I don't know if it was played for laughs, but I mean, it got a laugh out. I mean, it was like, oh, and it's kind of like one of those like, oh, that's awful, it kind of laughs. Yeah,
like, and Spielberg, not all of his films, but there's a certain whimsical nature to his movies. I mean, hell, even, Jaws. Like, Jaws is a terrifying movie, but at the same time, like, that score and stuff like that, and there's parts about, like, the adventure out on the open sea and things like that. There's a very whimsical kind of background to it, even though the nature of that film is about the horror of this animal being in the water that can kill people. But, like, he has a certain flair for the whimsical, I feel, in his films, and first of all, Tom Hanks fits in with that kind of setting perfectly, I think. And then on top of that, this was a serious movie about a serious period of time in American history, but I do feel like the way that you shoot things specifically can really make them funny, even if that's not what you intended to do. Mm-hmm. And so there were like you said, there's a few moments in there where you're like, I don't think that's supposed to be funny, but I'm laughing about it, and I probably shouldn't be, but
right.
It's just that the film made me laugh more than I remember, and I think that some of the stuff that's supposed to be funny, for example, like I'm going to jump ahead to performances just real quick. We can come back, but I think that everybody does a knockout job except for Matt Damon. I think Matt Damon is the worst part of this movie.
Yes, 100%.
He's
100%.
Awful.
I mean, yeah.
He was very young.
Big,
in his
like,
career as well.
Yes. His big rah-rah speech of, like, these are the only brothers I have left. And it's like, like, it was a great, it was a great line. It was written well, just delivered like crap.
When he tells that story about him and his brothers before the older ones get deployed, and he's laughing, and I think it's supposed to be like a humorous and endearing scene, and I just don't think at the time Matt Damon had the tools to deliver that properly, and it just doesn't come off very funny. And again, maybe that was on purpose too. Maybe it's funny to him, but you had to be there, kind of thing. And maybe he's playing that up very well. Maybe he's a genius. But I thought his character was the weakest, and it's funny because he's the titular character. The movie's about him, so.
No, I was just the people that were. I feel ashamed. Like the people I didn't realize were in this. There was just so many people in this movie that I had no idea. I mean, it had a killer cast, and it's funny because some of the people they used for like one scene. Like they had Branson in it, and he was literally in one scene. Diesel was in it. Now, obviously, this is before like Fast and Furious and stuff. Vin Diesel, but like he was in it. Wasn't Brittany Murphy like in it for literally a blink and you miss it? Wasn't she one of the typewriter ladies?
Oh, if she was, I did miss it because I didn't make note of that.
Yeah, I'm almost positive that was Brittany Murphy.
The people that I noticed are like Nathan Fillion is in it for a very small scene, and like you said, Ted Danson is what's his character's name?
Oh right, I forgot Ted Danson.
Captain Hamill. Captain Hamill is Ted Danson's character. Paul Giamatti's in it. He plays Sergeant Hill, and he's in there for a bit.
He's got some funny lines. He was one of those guys that, and it's what's great about him. Not the sidebar, but what's great about him is like he can be in a serious movie and have just great funny lines, and it fits like who he is as a person. Like I could imagine him being robbed at a bank and he would still be like cracking jokes or like but it's not like for yucks. It's just like it's just the way he talks and the way he delivers things.
We're probably going to go down a rabbit hole here and set up future episodes, but have you ever seen now I'm going to forget it, Shoot 'Em Up with Clive Owen and Paul Giamatti? I believe yes. That movie is amazing, and Paul Giamatti is the main villain in that, and he's awesome. But yeah, it, like you said, star-studded cast, like a bunch of really recognizable faces in this movie. People that just jump out at you, and you're like Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston's in this, right? And he's the he's the one of the big guys.
Yeah, that's who I don't know what the hell I said. What did I say? I called him Branson. That's who I meant, Branson.
You were putting his first name into his last name. People do that stuff. But yeah, it was a lot of either burgeoning stars who end up being, notable names, or a lot of names at the time who were just kind of doing small bit parts just to kind of get into this thing, which makes a lot of sense because this thing had a lot of hype prior to it coming out. And I mean, it had a $70 million budget, which for 98 is a really big movie.
That would make sense because I was just thinking with the set design and everything alone, I'm like, this movie must have cost a fortune. Like, and that was another thing that blew me away. And not to jump to another category, but the set design and the set pieces and the effects on this movie. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this movie. There's so many bad war movies out there. Like this one, I mean, it's just with the set design and the characters and the acting just really all pulled it together, and it was incredible. Edward Burns is a guy he's probably been in a million things that I haven't seen, but I really liked him in this movie. He was one of the standouts to me. He was Private Ryben. He was the one that kind of was standing up to Hanks and was like, this mission's foobar and all that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed him. I thought he played his character really well.
And I don't know him from anything else.
That's what I'm saying.
Off the top of my head.
When I first saw it, I thought he was the guy from what is it? This Is Us, or This Is that's what it's called. This Is Us.
This Is Us. Yeah.
He
does look like that guy. Is he not that guy?
He's not that guy. Because I thought for sure, I'm like, oh, that's him. That's what he was in. Because like before This Is Us, I never saw that guy in anything. And then I was like, oh, this is must be where he came from, and it's not.
I guess the age doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, well, he's deceptive. The guy from This Is Us is deceptively older than you would think.
Gotcha.
He's like in his mid to early 40s.
It's also worth stating, like it's easy to find the quality here. This is not some unheralded film that people have never heard of or something like that. Like we said, this has a $70 million budget behind it. It's made north of $450 million worldwide to date, so it's made tons of money. It won 5 Academy Awards, including like the big 4, so Best Director, Best Lead Actor, Writing, and Best Film. So it won Best Picture at the 1999 Oscars. So, and then it got Best Cinematography as well. But this is a huge movie, like that a lot of people really like.
That I somehow haven't seen.
Well, like you said, you get to a certain level where you're like, I haven't seen it up to this point, and I don't really have a reason to. So,
right, yeah.
I think that's easy enough to do.
An episode that won't get made because I did see it before the podcast started. I never saw, famously never saw any of the Lord of the Ring movies until finally, you and our group of friends basically threatened my life if I didn't watch them. So, I'm one of them guys who, if one of those big movies get past me, I'm just like, I'm not going to go back and watch it. Because what happens is I fall into this trap a few times where like a big blockbuster will get past me, and then I'll watch it 10 years later, and then I'll want to talk about it. And then people are like, are you just seeing this for the first time? And I have to, I don't know, I feel ashamed. Like, no, of course not. I just watched it again for, after, it's been a while, but it was really great, wasn't it?
You guys seen the Snyder Cut? You hear about this thing?
No.
Came out a few years ago.
I watched that movie once. I'm not, fool me once, shame on me.
You don't want to watch it again and 2 hours longer?
No, I don't care what Snyder did to that movie. He should have did it the first time around.
All right, so let's let's get into performances. Like an easy way to kind of ease into this. Who was your favorite character? I feel like you had 8 to choose from if you're going from, the group that went out to find Ryan, or you could use Ryan. But yeah, who was your favorite character?
I really liked Mike. I didn't catch. Again, I'm awful with names. He was the older, higher ranking guy with Hanks with Miller. When he died, you could tell that really hit Hanks's character really hard. He just kept calling his name over and over again. He was up there. And then, I mean, this might be, cliche to say, but Miller was amazing. I think Hanks did an amazing job in that role, and I really enjoyed his performance.
So you're talking about Tom Sizemore's character, Sergeant Horvath?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also love Sergeant Horvath. He was my favorite as well.
Perfect. All right, good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm redeeming myself after not liking the big bad from Crow, so good.
I love... I think I could watch a prequel film about how Horvath got here and I'd be happy to see it.
100%. Like his life before the war.
He's just a take no shit kind of guy, and he's Captain Miller's right-hand man, his number 2, and I love their dynamic that they have, as you stated, like, and how devastating it is when Horvath eventually is killed. Hanks is on his way out as well. Captain Miller's on his way out. But yeah, I love Tom Sizemore did a great job, and he's very dedicated to, his role as the second in command, and getting these privates together and having them fall in line and stuff, even when they get a little mutinous about, has Captain Miller lost his touch, and what is he thinking, assaulting like this machine gun nest when it has nothing to do with our mission and stuff. And I loved Tom Hanks's explanation of like, I thought our mission was to win the war, and that kind of thing. And so yeah, just really great stuff all around from both of them. And Tom Sizemore is one of those guys that I've only seen in a handful of things, which I think is kind of a crime. I think he ended up doing a lot of TV, and a lot of his film roles I think passed me by, but he's so good in this.
Yeah, him and Hanks had one of my favorite, and again, it kind of goes back to that like unexpectedly funny scenes where they're like, all right, we're gonna run up here, and we're gonna throw. I think this is when they were gonna throw their grenades at the machine gun nest, and his character goes, well, I'll run, and then Hank's like, no, I've seen you run, I'll run. I've seen the way you run, or something. That scene, like, I cracked up. And again, it was one of those things where it fit the feel of the movie. It was clearly a line for laughs, but it didn't take you out of the scene. One of the things, talking about performances, is, and I don't think enough movies touch on this, is like the fact that these guys weren't born as soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, our country went to war, and they had to stop their teacher job or whatever job they were doing, and then became soldiers. And I think this movie, through the performances, does a really good job of like reminding you of that, and it's done and performed in a really believable way. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm just sorry. I'm looking at Tom Sizemore's IMDb. This man loved to work. Like, he was in so much stuff.
He's like the Nicolas Cage of.
Yeah, and also I must have known this and forgot, but he passed away. He died this year.
This year?
Yeah, he died in 2023. I think I remember seeing it, and then now tell me how this happens. I mean, I know how it happens, but it's ridiculous. So Tom Sizemore passed away recently. He has 30 films that are upcoming for him because they're all in post-production. This guy worked a lot.
Wow.
A whole lot. Man. And one of them's a Peter Pan animated thing. He was Smee.
Huh.
That's amazing. Anyway, R.I.P. to Tom Sizemore. He was amazing in Saving
Rest in peace, sir. Sorry I waited so long to see your movie.
The other character that I really enjoyed was Barry Pepper's Private Jackson, the devout sniper.
Yes.
I just love how brash he was. I love the, his respectful way of talking to Miller about how he might think that something is a waste of time, or a waste of resources, or his God-given talent kind of thing. And he was like, I'm just saying, if you put me within a mile or so of Adolf Hitler with a sniper rifle, I could, and a clear line of sight, I could bring this war to an end, today, that kind of thing. And so, just talking about like, are we going to assault this, area or something like that? I think it's a waste of my time. Or I think he's talking in general about just going and finding Ryan, and he's like, what a waste! I could be out here shooting Nazis. So, loved Barry Pepper's character. He gets a brutal death, but at the same time, it's pretty glamorous compared to like Wade and Mellish are the two that I'm like, good lord, like those were the shittiest. I felt like garbage watching both of those guys get killed. At least Barry Pepper gets blown up in a bell tower. Like it was fast. tank blows him up. So, not saying that's not awful, but
right. Just like reliving these death scenes. I'm just like, no, please, someone else has to survive, please.
Well, it's different. It's very different. And we're still talking about performances here, folks. I don't want anybody to think that we've gone completely off the rails. It is a performance thing because Giovanni Ribisi, I get not so emotional that I'm crying, but I can feel it. And it's thinking about like your kid, or, and being that scared and stuff like that. And he's calling for his mother and stuff. Like, it was a heartbreaking moment. And then you compare that to Mellish's death, where he's stabbed when Upham doesn't bring him the ammunition and things like that, and the Nazis are allowed to get into the building. That one is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to watch a man slowly get stabbed to death.
That was the first time, like, I think I almost like looked away. Like it was like one of those like stereotypical looking through your fingers kind of like please, just stab him quickly, please. Like couldn't he just
and the guy's trying to comfort him, right, like the guy's trying to comfort him, like and to shush him, like to keep him quiet while he does it, and just and you can just see that. And Adam Goldberg is not an actor that I really revere in any way, shape, or form. He's Eddie, the crazy roommate from Friends to me. That's what I know him from. And his role that he had in I'm blanking on the film, doesn't matter. Anyway, it was a 70s movie about kids smoking weed. Anyway, so Adam Goldberg goes in this moment of rage where he's in this battle, this fight with this soldier, and it goes from that to him literally begging, like, please, like, wait a minute, like, let's talk. When he no longer has the upper hand and stuff, and it was just really sad.
That was tough. Not to completely switch gears, but still in performance, I feel like Tom Hanks in almost every one of his movies has that scene where like he just gets to his wit's end and he like just kind of loses it. Like I can clearly remember like in the Burbs, which amazing movie. I freaking love The Burbs. Now, how did I see The Burbs, but I never saw Saving Private Ryan? Anyway, I mean, think about any Tom Hanks movie. There's always some scene where he kind of just, like, he's like, all right, well, fine, and then just, like, loses his shit. The scene where he's just like, he's like, all right, fine, well, and he just starts yelling to all the people as they're walking by, like, are you Ryan? Ryan, are you Ryan? Private Ryan? And then the guy's like, I knew Private Ryan. It's just, it's one of those scenes that like cracked me up. And it proves that sometimes just running around yelling someone's name might pay off.
And to me, Tom Hanks will always be like America's dad. And he kind of has that, he has a very fatherly nature about him. And my favorite scene depicting this is when he's introduced to Corporal Upham and basically goes and snags him to bring him along, and Upham just is complete. He doesn't have any of his shit together, and he's trying to bring his typewriter, and Tom Hanks is holding up the pencil like, you're not going to need that, and he grabs one helmet but it's not the correct one, and he's dropping shit all over the place. And Tom Hanks, the best line of that whole scene is Tom Hanks just saying, take your time, Corporal, because he's Russian.
When I realized in that opening scene how gory the movie was going to be, I was like, Tom Hanks is in this movie. Like how? And I mean, he's such an he's such an unexpected like action star. Which it's weird. I wouldn't necessarily classify this movie as an action movie, which I mean, it very much is. It's shooting and things blowing up, but it's not what you think when you think action movie. But yeah, I was very, again, I really enjoyed Tom Hanks. He's one of my, favorite actors. And I was, after that opening scene, I was like, how the hell is Tom Hanks gonna, not be Tom Hanks in this movie? And he still was Tom Hanks, and he did an amazing, like, he was still Tom Hanks, but it worked. Like, it wasn't like because there are some actors where they are not typecast, but like, it doesn't matter what role they're in, they're always the same character. And Tom Hanks is that, but it works. Like, he's always that, like, America's dad, but it works.
Yeah.
Like, he's America's dad, but he's America's dad who's also a World War II soldier or a detective trying to capture Leonardo DiCaprio, or, you know,
guy a con artist.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, I think that back to your thing about this movie being an action film, I think it's easy to separate because this has its own distinction as a war film. And
okay. I guess that is its own genre.
And a lot of time it's, of course, war features a lot of action in it, but it's the way that it's depicted. I think action films, they depict action as a means to entertain, whereas a war film is doing it more as a means to show you how things were. You know, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think that, like you said, there's action in it, but it isn't an action film. It's a war epic, or it's a war film, but it's more of a drama than anything.
Yeah, it wasn't shot to look cool. I mean, there are definitely set pieces and parts of the movie where I'm like, I just trying to wrap my head around what. And now that you told me it was $70 million, that what goes into it. But I mean, it looks like they created entire cities that were blown apart. So yeah, I mean, sorry, completely blanked there for a minute. But yeah, I mean, they built these entire cities and then to look like they're blown apart, and you wouldn't see that in an action movie. They wouldn't put that kind of time and dedication, you know. And obviously, this movie isn't made to be historically accurate, but it you know, it is, you know. So,
well, and I will accept your segue in terms of, you know, talking about the things that the way is shot, and I'm going to bring up some technical stuff. First of all, I want to preface this by saying I feel like these war films commonly sweep the board at like award shows and things like that because of their technical aspects. A lot of the, like, for example, this past year, All Quiet on the Western Front was remade again. I think this is the third or fourth time, but it was remade in Germany, so it was a German film, and it was incredible. The film was amazing, but most of what was amazing about it was the sound design, the way that it was shot, you know, and the editing and things like that. And this movie essentially does the same thing, and you can see why it won an Oscar for cinematography. The way that it was shot was incredible. I believe the guy's name is Janus, the cinematographer. Hang on, let me look at it. I just had it in front of my face, and then I clicked away from it. But the way that it's shot, there are some directorial decisions as well that I think are really trying to highlight what war feels like for us who have no idea. And so there's this element of chaos that goes on. There are incidences where Tom Hanks is trying to use a walkie to deliver some kind of message to command or something like that somewhere nearby. It's like him and Paul Giamatti are talking and trying to get this message relayed via a walkie-talkie. Or I'm sorry, they're talking about it in the background. Then in the foreground, there's a guy talking to another guy on a walkie-talkie, and those conversations are happening at the same time. And it's like, I'm probably supposed to be paying attention to both of these things. It's probably important to the plot, what's being said. There's also explosions of mortar fire, and there's, you know, gunshots, and I think it was raining in that scene, so you're hearing the rain spattering against the ground. You're trying to take in all this audio at the same time and be able to filter it out, and it's just like, that is our shitty version of what soldiers had to go through at this time. Like, this is the best way for us to experience just how chaotic it was. This is why this is why you have to be so highly trained to be able to pick up the information that somebody's trying to give to you, synthesize it, and turn it into the action that they're expecting you to be able to do, and move on without needing to be like, wait, I didn't catch all that because of all this other shit going on. I think they did an incredible job of showing that in this film. Equally, the way that they shot it from a camera standpoint, there are times where they go complete handy cam, and so you're in there, and it's almost like you're in there. It's shot from like a first person's perspective, and you're following, you know, the soldier in front of you, you know, into action and things like that. There are times where they're showing, you know, very grand sweeping shots of scenes of absolute terror and gore and, dead bodies strewn across the beach. Or there's this one really brilliant shot of Miller's group walking, and it's the dead of night or very early in the morning or something like that. You can barely even see that they're there, and the only reason you know that they're on the screen is because every once in a while a mortar explodes in the distance and it lights up the sky just enough that you see these silhouettes of men walking across. Just really, really beautifully shot. There's a lot of really, really cool things that were done with the camera. The guy's name is Janusz Kaminski. He won the Oscar for cinematography, and he definitely deserved it. It was a beautiful, beautiful film. And like I said, it's 25 years old. It does not look like a film that's
it held up. Yeah. You and I talked before the pod. I'm not typically the most technical when it comes to, with movies. I can appreciate, a great scene or a great camera or a great sound design, but it's not typically the thing that I realize I'm picking up on. But then, talking with you, like you were saying with the camera shots and how like they would get you in there and stuff. I mean, the roller coaster I went on as far as like feeling anxiety, or when we were in like those scenes where it was you were tight in a room, and just that like the most fear of like, oh shit, what's going to happen next? They just the sound and video alone, it took me on a ride. I mean, it really emotionally just through this movie was, again, I've said amazing probably 100 times, but absolutely amazing. It really just, I don't know why I waited 25 years to see this movie. I mean, just all of this stuff combined made for a perfect movie. A movie that, I think it's definitely crept into my top 10 as far as favorite movies.
Nice.
Again, wish I would have seen it, 25 years ago or even 10 years ago. But, there was one shot that, it was the shot where they're going after the machine gun. And it's almost like they're playing catch with the grenade. Mm-hmm. Like he throws it up, and it's like I'm almost screaming at the screen, like, "Stop throwing it at that spot!" Like, and it's like every time the Germans throw it back, it's almost getting closer and closer to where they are, and it's just like, oh shit! It was such a cool, like, it was so cool how it was shot. Like, it wasn't, again, like your typical action movie where it's like the guy throws it and then just blows up. You see body parts, or a guy like doing that pratfall that you always see in movies, the slow front flip. I mean, it built suspense with watching them throw it back. And every time you see him, like, okay, maybe that one landed. And then like the last minute you see a German like just hucking it back at him. That was visually one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
And what I liked about that is that whole interaction with tossing the grenades back and forth and stuff like that, that was shot through a scope that Oppum was supposed to have been holding. It was like a...
right.
It was like a detached scope from a rifle, potentially, or maybe just that's how telescopes look for, when you have a little field telescope. And they shot it through that, so you had the little crosshairs.
Yeah.
And, it's bobbing up and down as if a person's holding it and things like that. Very, very cool way to kind of watch that firefight take place with that machine gun nest.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for anytime you're kind of a POV of one of the characters, because it puts you in the movie. Yeah.
And then, of course, there's amazing sound in the film. They do a great job of, all the guns and stuff like that. I'm not a gun aficionado to know that they are 100% accurate in terms of the way they sound. They certainly sound, very effective, very loud and powerful. The sound of, bullets whizzing by characters, that tracing sound.
Yeah.
The German tanks during the bridge scene.
That thing was terrifying. Like when you
they made it sound alive.
Yeah,
they make it sound like a kaiju. That's what I had in my notes. Like, they make it sound like a kaiju just descended upon this bridge.
I mentioned Fury earlier, and it's for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a World War II movie, and a lot of it's essentially about tanks and tank fighting. And I mean, they're both very similar, like that grinding sound of the tank turning and moving and stuff. It's terrifying. And I watched most of the movie through headphones, because it was late at night, and like one, I guess, complaint I would have about the movie is it goes from scenes of dialogue and it's, you know, talking, and there's a lot of hushed tones, and, you know, so you're really turning the TV up to hear it, and then shit's blowing up. So it's like, oh God, I'm, you know, someone who watches movies after everyone goes to bed. So it's, you know, 12 o'clock at night, and, you know, the Germans are attacking. So, but I mean, in both of those movies, there's something so unnerving about the sounds of a tank, and if that's what they really sound like, it's fear-inducing.
Just impending doom is on its way.
Like, you know, you're screwed. Like, you're fighting a tank.
And to your point, I mean, the best iteration of that I could think of is Miller is talking with Paul Giamatti's character, Hill, and they're just having a conversation about essentially what they're going to do next or something. And he talks about how he has a hitchhiker, like he has something in his boot he needs to get out. And so he sits down to take care of that, and he knocks over a plank of wood, and it knocks a brick wall down. There's a bunch of Nazis on the other side, and they're just screaming at each other. It just goes from 0 to 60.
I thought that part was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So last thing on the docket, really, and then I want to get to whether or not there were things that we didn't touch on, and you know, that are in your notes, and if so, we can hit on those. The effects. I didn't write down a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
For the effects, other than the fact that there was a lot of dummy work in this movie. They made a lot of bodies, a lot of bodies with some nasty and gnarly looking injuries to them, and then you know, gunshot wound and people with like intestines hanging out and stuff like that. Just very gory, very nasty stuff. Whatever they did with, because this was filmed in Ireland, I don't know 100% what the protocol is in terms of, they must be pouring something in the water, like just offshore, so that when the waves are lapping up against the sand, it's tinted red with blood. I don't know exactly what they did, but it was effective as hell, and very telling about just the massacre that basically takes place there.
There were a couple of really great fire stunts in this movie. I remember specifically there was right during the beach scene, two guys are coming out of the boat, and they get hit and they're on fire, but they're still running.
Yeah.
But not like in terror running. It's not like arms flailing over their head. It's like they're still like holding their guns, like storming the beach, but on fire.
Yeah.
I feel like there was quite a few fire stunts in this movie.
You're right, because there's some flamethrowers in there, and and on the beach, one of the Americans that is a flamethrower soldier ends up getting his tank hit, and so that it explodes basically on his back and sends him and several people around him ablaze.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned this pretty much at the beginning, like how gory the movie is. I was not expecting it. Not at all. I mean, I've never seen someone's insides and guts and stuff, but I feel like after seeing this movie, I have a pretty good idea. Again, not to keep going back to action movies, but it wasn't, it was done really well. They did not skimp on the organs or blood in this movie, I feel like.
Photographers, like war photography, I don't think really started. I mean, I could be 100% wrong, but I feel like that was something that started with Vietnam. And so Tom Savini, for example, is an incredible makeup and effects artist, specifically in the horror community. And he has done the effects work on some of the biggest horror movies ever made, and a lot of his experience, if I'm remembering this correctly, is because he was a wartime photographer in Vietnam, and so
Get
he
out
saw.
of town.
Yeah,
I did
so
not
he
know
saw
that.
a lot of it for real, and
holy smokes! I did not know that. I know a good bit about him, and I had no idea that's where he got not his start. But man, that's wild.
Josh will have to. He'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what he did, and that's where the experience comes from, of knowing what a lot of that stuff would look like, or having a good idea anyway.
Gotcha. And it's fun. It's crazy to think this movie was 25 years ago, because we mentioned how it holds up, and I mean the scenes where it's like up close, people getting shot. It's not. If they didn't do it practically, like, I don't know, like, whatever CGI they used was amazing, because it still holds up 25 years later. It's not that really crummy, like, fake spray blood, or the smoke from, like, you know, the bullet hitting the guy in the head or something. It doesn't look like completely fake. Like, I felt like I watched a guy get shot in the face, or get shot in the, you know, or shot apart or blown up. I mean, it's crazy that movie is 25 years old with how great it still looks.
I think there was a lot of squib work done of just having people with those poppers on their bodies and stuff like that. I don't think it was CGI. Some of the, like you said, the guy that takes his helmet off and then gets shot in the forehead, like, I'm not 100% sure how you would do that unless it was computer generated. I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's a way to do it practically as well.
Right.
But it was incredibly well done.
I mean, yeah, regardless of how they did that scene with the helmet, it looked amazing. Like, it looked like a dude got shot in the head. Yeah. And, like, I mean, I've said this about Jurassic Park, like, the original Jurassic Park. I mean, there's scenes in that movie that I feel like could still stand up against movies that are made today. Definitely. And I would say that about this movie is, like, you could put this side by side. Like, I was thinking about I've mentioned Inglourious Bastards and Fury a couple of times. It's gonna sound stupid, so just hang with me. Like, I feel like all three of these movies could be like, I know they're all about World War II, but I feel like these characters could all intermingle with each other and be, like, in the same universe. Like, just with how they were shot, and again, kind of like you were saying, how there's a difference between an action movie and, you know, what's a war movie. But I don't know where I was going with this. You know what? You might want to just gonna cut this spot, because I don't know where the hell I was going with that. Sorry.
Well, I like that Brad Pitt's in two of them.
Right.
In two of your examples. So, like, Aldo Raines could meet up with Brad Pitt's character in Fury, because they happen to be passing through the same town at the same time, but they're in different companies or something like that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I've realized my point. Like, though this movie came out 25 years ago, like, I feel like you could put it beside Fury, which came out, you know, in the last decade, or you could put it next to Inglourious Bastards, and it would fit next to these other movies. Definitely. Like, it doesn't. It's, you know, it was incredibly shot. The graphics and the you know, the CGI or whatever, the practical effects, the effects in this movie were outstanding.
Yeah, the technology is there. You know, the filming techniques, or what they film on. You know, and that's a lot of it too. When you find a film that was done in the 70s or something like that, like film and film stock and shooting things digitally and things like that, it makes everything a lot different. And so that's where a lot of the color grading is different. You know, the frames per second is a little bit different or a little bit off, and you can just tell those things. But now, you know, probably starting in the 90s more than anything, and you bring those films into modern day, and it's not as big of a difference as it used to be. The things that you notice now are more like, you know, what music is on the soundtrack, or how did they dress, and it's like, okay, this is clearly a movie from the 90s. Nobody talks like that anymore, you know, like that kind of stuff. So but the way things were shot and the medium that was used to shoot it, I think is something that is now, I mean, obviously HD stuff came later, but it's still modern enough feeling, whereas you take it back another decade and it's probably like, okay, I can tell like this film stock that they use is just very dated looking. So yeah, it holds up 100%, but I feel like we've covered the 4 like main topics that I do when I'm taking notes. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Is there something that we haven't mentioned that you wanted to make sure to get out there? Make sure that we know your opinion on, or, have we covered Saving Private Ryan?
No, I honestly, I think we covered Saving Private Ryan. I was just kind of looking through my notes here. And I don't see anything that we didn't cover. I mean, I really enjoyed this movie. Oh, the one thing that they never really explained, and I think it was probably done on purpose, is the Tom Hanks handshaking thing. Like, I feel like that was put in there as for you to kind of make your own conclusion about, like, is it shell shock from the war? Is it, does he have an underlying condition that's causing him to shake? Is it an anxiety thing? I thought I kind of appreciated that they didn't give you an answer on what was causing, because I feel like movies have a tendency to explain everything to you and kind of hand feed you everything, and it's like sometimes I think it's cool when a character has something that they showed that a good 3 or 4 times. His hand shaking, especially the point where he was like showing the compass, and like his whole company saw, noticed the handshake, and they never really explain what it is that's causing it. I thought that was really cool.
I took that as a certainly some kind of level of shell shock, or the weight of everything kind of bearing down on him and causing it. I mean, he talks about he's talking to Horvath in the church and talking about essentially everybody giving him these groups of men to lead, and whether or not he's more or less saying whether or not he's worthy of such a responsibility. And he's like, do you know how many of my men I've lost? And he tells him 94 at the time. And obviously many more members of this group end up being killed before the end of the movie, including Miller himself. And it really does call into question, like, the way that he leads men and things like that, is it effective? And he ends up talking about it too, where it's just like, I have to believe for every one of my men that gets killed, like it basically gets us closer to our goal, and that it's a worthy sacrifice and something that had to happen so that they could win. Right. And, he's obviously dealing with an incredible amount of weight. I mean, we see him break down when Wade is killed. I mean, he has to go find a private place by himself, and he really lets go emotionally because of how much that hurt him. And he's probably been burying a lot of that deep with some of his previous ones that we didn't even get to see within the runtime of the movie. So, yeah, I think he has done and seen a lot of stuff, and, it's just breaking him physically. Yeah.
One other scene that I wanted to mention that I felt was, again, we touched on it a little bit earlier about how, I feel like you and I have been accused of this, of being able to have fun no matter what we're doing. I remember years ago us helping my now wife move, and you and I were like busting a gut laughing as we're humping a couch up some steps, and it's just like, can you guys do anything where you're not, having fun? And I feel like, in situations like war, like you've got to find, some type of joy, or you're going to completely lose your mind. And one of the scenes that I thought was really dark, but also like I feel very real, was the scene where they're going through the dog tags to see if Private Ryan was dead, and they're all kind of, it's almost like they're circled around playing poker, like they're like making jokes, and I think there was like an Italian name. Oh, this is one of your guys, and then like that realization is like the whole First Airborne's walking by, and you're going through all their dead friends, tags, and you're making jokes. It was such a like, and again, it's one of those scenes where like it starts off funny because like they're making the jokes, but then you realize how dark it is, And then the movie even tells you, like, hey guys, you're being assholes. Like, these guys are mourning for their friends and you're making jokes over here. I thought that was a really, a really great scene. I thought it was incredible how it kind of took you on that roller coaster of emotions of like, hey, this is a funny scene. No, it's not. It's dark as shit.
Another thing that I liked about that scene is it kind of brought Miller down to earth a little bit, because even he was smiling and being humored by their banter. And it just goes to show you, like, he's not God, or he's not the perfect man just because he's the captain and he's the highest ranking person around and all this other stuff. Like, he's a guy, and that was clearly a mistake to do that in front of those other guys, and it's the medic who has to run over and tell them how fucked up it is. Like, it's not Miller that realized it being in his leadership role. It was the medic that came up and was like, hey guys, this is messed up, we should stop. So I thought that was cool. I thought that was important to make him seem like a person and not just
because he has that like realization of that like oh shit moment when the medic comes over. I thought one missed opportunity in the movie when Hanks finally reveals that he's a school teacher. When he says, I'm a school teacher, and I was waiting for him to say Greenbow, Alabama, but then he says some bullshit Pennsylvania town. But just spikes the camera when he says it with a big wink, like.
Oy vey. That's when the Merry Melodies sign just shows up around his head. Porky Pig bursts through a drum. Well, on that note, is that our fully covered Saving Private Ryan, sir?
I believe so. I'm all
right.
I'm very thankful to you, the Boon, for creating this podcast and giving me the reason to watch these movies that are 20 to 35 years old. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the point of the Screen Sermon show. I think it's more for the people on it than it is for the audience listening to it. It's just like, this is like therapy. I got to get these people to watch X movie, or, for some reason I haven't seen this and I need to have an excuse to do it. So let's do it, and then we'll talk about it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun for me too, being able to introduce people to movies maybe that they haven't seen and vice versa. So, well, all right, folks. I do want to just quickly apologize. I recognize that no episode came out last Sunday. We had some technical issues toward the end of the week when we normally record, and then I was going to do something. I was going to record something by myself. I was going to talk about the strikes going on with the Screen Actors Guild and the writers and things like that. Ultimately, I decided I am not qualified to really talk about that kind of shit, so I decided not to do it. And, unfortunately, there's some people out there who aren't able to work because they're not getting paid what they should be paid. And it's not fair, and I'm hoping that it's something that is resolved soon, and, there's a good outcome to all of this, and the film industry and film and television industry can move on in a positive direction, but we'll believe it when we see it, I guess. But that's it for the pod this week. I'll be on with Josh next week, and we'll be talking about Coming Soon for August, so always look forward to those very bohemian experiences where Josh and I just kind of fuck around for a while in a not so structured way. So we'll look forward to doing that, and Jay, we'll look forward to having you back the next time that you're in. So
yeah, man,
thanks for coming on and watching Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me, and thank you all for listening to my ramblings.
All right, man. Well, that's it for the Screen Sermon podcast this week. We'll talk to you next week. See you later.
Bye.